Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Wednesday afternoon. First up is an apology. You should never start with one, apparently. But Kevin Graham is under his sink with... What do you need when you're under a sink when you're doing plumbing? I don't know, because I would never clue what to do. And unfortunately, he can't join us today. So I'm stepping into Kevin's boots. But he will be back with me tonight, because we're going to have a show tonight at 6 o'clock at Screama Celica, where Kevin and I will be covering the master plan. Talking of which, gentlemen, there is a master plan, and it's Ange's master plan. He is the man with a master plan. And Yogi, you have been doing one of the Yogi polls this week, I understand. Can you tell us all about it so we can get the commenters involved, and then we'll return to that later in the show?
Yeah, so basically I was thinking about the midfield options that we have, and, you know, trying to weed out all the usual caveats. So he's slightly off form, and he is, you know, he's injured, or, you know, whatever. So what I wanted to see was what people's thoughts were, assuming everyone's fit, assuming everyone's at the top of their game, right? Who are your midfield trio, right? So I put this poll out, and we got over 4,000 votes, which is unbelievable.
Remarkable.
It's more than you get in a council election. Now, I could only pick 4 options because there's maximum 4 for a poll. So my permutations were, so the first one is Hatate, O'Reilly and Kalmak. The second one was Hatate, Iwata and Kalmak. The third one was Hatate, Moy and Kalmak. And the fourth one is Hatate, Iwata and Moy. So that's Hatate, O'Reilly, Kalmak, Hatate, Iwata, Kalmak, Hatate, Moy, Kalmak, Hatate, Iwata, Moy. And as I said in the question, for those that were listening, let's not be having all your caveats and all your fence sitting in the comments. Make the call based on who you believe are the best 3, not the best 3 domestically, the best 3 in you, the best 3. Full stop.
It's a
Who
tough
do
one.
you want to play? Who do you want to play on? It's a very difficult question. It seems like such an innocuous question, but it's a nightmare of a question.
So difficult.
So that's why I think we get so many votes on it. But yeah, we'll let you fight amongst yourselves in the comments for the moment.
Yeah, and we'll come back to it, John, because if you were to ask me the question about the back 5, you know, I think most people are in agreement. Even like the top 3, there may be 1 or 2 different permutations, but it's that midfield 3 that's so difficult to decide upon. Patrick, welcome back to the show yourself. I know you were here last week, but you've obviously been enjoying Celtic. I've been saying, how is things? Well, life is good when Celtic are playing the way they are. And we were talking, because John's not had an opportunity to talk about, obviously, the Rangers game or the Killie game, but we were talking about that 30 minutes, that 27-minute masterclass that we experienced against Kilmarnock. And, you know, that's like a third of a game. And I'm pretty sure that Ange is aiming at some point in his Celtic tenure to get to the point where we see that for 90 minutes. And if that's possible, and I don't know if it is, Patrick, if that's possible, it is frightening as to what we can achieve under this man.
Yeah, you do think right throughout Ange's tenure, you know, we've had these spells, we've had these halves. You think the first 45 minutes against Rangers last February when we went 3-0 up. You think about, say, the 55 minutes we had against Real Madrid, 27 minutes we had at the weekend there. There's probably loads of games that I'm totally forgetting about. You know, we have these half an hour, 45-minute spells, and it's incredibly difficult to keep up for 90 minutes, obviously. You know, even possible. But then you do think to times like Dundee United, 9-0 back in August. And, you know, as daft as it is to say, I don't think that's, you know, the best Celtic team we've seen this season. It just so happened that just about every shot went into the back of the net. So you do wonder what we'd be capable of, you know, if we're playing at the top level and we can play like this for even 60 minutes. And maybe, you know, in Europe, you find yourself 1 or 2-0 up and you can try and hold on. So I think, you know, I think you were saying before the show, I don't think we've seen the finished product here. We're still building. We're always building. And for as long as Ange is going to be here, he's going to constantly want to get better. So I think it's frightening what team we could see next season if you know, if he's able to spend money in the summer and we're able to build and develop further.
Yeah, I mean that's why I've decided on this tagline, John, because we do hear a lot of racket in the media from certain sides of the media. Don't they realise that Ange will strengthen too? Because it's unfinished business, and it's a work in progress, John. We are going to be strengthening in the summer, and I keep going on to the point that we've got a lot of players out on loan at the moment. If we can, I think a couple of them will come back, but if we can take the 12 players that are out on loan on decent wages combined, turn that into 3 or 4 quality players who are really pushing for a jersey, Celtic are going to be a frightening proposition.
Well, I mean, we haven't really kicked off yet. This is one season in Europe. He had a season where he had to build from absolute calamity. Mm-hmm. And then, with one season in Europe to try and put some solid foundations under that. Foundations are in. Let's start building the luxury Celtic mansion that we all want to live in. I don't think we're close to getting started. And Ange is the linchpin, obviously. Ange is the key. His ability to spot and identify players seems to be unmatched. Obviously, now that his main competition's gone as well, because the only person who was as brilliant at his job as Ange was your man Ross Wilson, wasn't he? So I mean, he's had to take that genius down to Nottingham Forest. That's what what do they call it? Rats and sinking ships. And but if I was looking at the rebuild that he was looking at, I'd have been off sharpish as well. Mm-hmm. Because I've said before, we achieved that only because we had the great good fortune through a variety of unlucky and unfortunate things that happened, but we had the great good fortune to come across possibly one of the only people, and in my view, the only person who could have done that job for us, that rebuild for us within the budget that we had, by coming up with all the Japanese players, and some of the other guys, he's managed to turn around and having that vision as well. So it's not just, it's the whole package. It's his experience, where he came from, his leadership skills, his vision, his tactical nous, right? His strategic thinking. So all of that encapsulated into one guy, and we were so lucky to get him, as it transpires now. And I think that going forward, I just can't wait to see what we do. I mean, the nonsense that we're hearing from them, strength, it's always, there's so much noise. There's always noise, and it's always rubbish. Mm-hmm. They're going to do this, that, they're going to the next thing. They've got 12 guys, roughly, I think, 11 or 12 guys, senior pros, cornerstones of their side, out of contract, right? So, what are they going to get for them? I mean, they're all, why would they even sign again if they can get decent money elsewhere? So all they're going to be left with is guys that can't find a better club, and probably on more wages than they were on before, and they don't have anyone in place to do the job. Certainly Michael Beale isn't fit to do that job, not even remotely. Although I did work out after the Rangers game how Beale's going to end up getting sacked, and it'll not be because of the football. It'll be because it'll be a Me Too scandal. Because if you can't tell the difference between a hand and a groin, you're going to be in a lot of bother when you're saying hello to people. Right? So I think Michael Beale will be, so suddenly there'll be a scandal there for sure. But it's, and after that as well, it's a constant deflection, the lack of accountability. I'm so sick of the noise. The way I want to finish out this season is I want to put them to bed another 2 times. I don't want to give them a crack of light, not an inch. And I just want to see them done, dusted out. And I don't want to hear their squealing about, oh no, we won that game, or we managed to draw the second half, or if the second half was 270 minutes long, we could have won it, or the usual garbage. So it's just fairy tales. It's a fiefdom of fairy tales. That's all they are. They're just telling stories to each other in the hope that they can convince each other that there's actually something in it for them. And there isn't. There's not. We will go on and strengthen in the summer, as you say. We'll leave them in the dirt if they don't qualify for the Champions League. they are serious bother in terms of, never mind finances, but in terms of the gap in quality, that we're going to be able to put on that field. So, there's a lot to look forward to.
No, there is. John, there's a massive issue in that, as you're saying there, people are just opening their mouth and talking drivel, right? So if, for example, someone says we're 4 or 5 players short of Celtic, you think, right, okay, that's an opinion, by the way, straight off the bat, that's an opinion. However, that means that you're going to strengthen by 5 and Celtic are not going to strengthen at all. And why is that not being challenged? This is my frustration, is if somebody comes out with something as flimsy as that, you're going to say, well, Ange, the strength is in recruitment. Look what he's done. Look what he's going to do. And another massive part of this, when we were doing what was a rebuild, John, we had assets. We had assets that we sold on, and with the money we made from the likes of Ayer and Edward, it was reinvested into the squad, and that was massive, because if you're looking at, we're going to bring 4 or 5 in, how are you going to pay for them? How are you going to pay for them? Because you don't have the star man that you're going to sell for 20 or 15 million quid, and then you can then turn your recruitment now into bringing 3 or 4 players in.
That was our best ever year, Paul, wasn't it, for player sales? 35 million, something like that. So exactly that. We were in the absolute pits of despair, and we had no squad at all. But we did have money, and it just needed the right person to do a fairly miraculous job. But we had money. I don't see them having the same thing at all. Another share issue, another confetti share issue. I was just checking there. They've issued, what is it? Sorry, I didn't take a picture of it, but 457,226,300 ordinary shares. I thought that was a joke. That's why I checked it. So I googled that because I saw someone put that on Twitter, and I thought they were kidding. No, they've got almost 500 million shares, right, in issue. So basically, as I was saying last night on Twitter, it really, really reminds me of the scene in The Wolf of Wall Street, when he's making his reputation by selling these worthless penny shares in Aerotyne, as this such a great opportunity. Those shares are worth more than these. So it's absolutely ridiculous. I was actually just reading, someone put a link up to an interview they'd done with a Club 1872. The desperation and the ways that they're trying to raise money. I mean, it really smacks of a road we've been down before, but, we'll get all the clubs to band together and get them all to contribute £25. We'll get all the CSCs to do that. And then, we can get people coming together to donate money to us. And if everyone donates, 50 quid, then we're going to have a load of money to put into shares. Of course, we can only put money into shares. We can't get the money back out. So this is charity we're talking about here. It's not a business, it's charity. So I know it's foundations of sand, isn't it? Everything is built in foundations of sand.
We were talking last week about how, on average, under the tenure of David Murray, versus on average since 2012, this Rangers have lost more money on average season on season. And that obviously is unsustainable. You see what happened before. No one's talking about it, John. You see how it's packaged up, that story of the confetti shares, but it's packaged up going to a tried and tested way of raising funds.
Boosting income, yeah.
Yes. By the way, that's their problem. Let them deal with it. If it was my football club, I'd be really concerned about it. Thankfully, it isn't. Now, if you're watching, and we've got about 600 on the live stream at the moment, give us a thumbs up. These kind of things help the videos on the algorithm on YouTube. Give us a big thumbs up. Tell us that you like the show. Make a wee comment, and we'll get round to as many as we possibly can. I'm glad you brought that up, because Stephen Sloan was wondering what it's all about with regards to constantly doing these share issues. I think, is it the third this year alone? Yeah, it is.
Third in the last 3 months. Third in the last 3 months.
Shambolic.
Yeah. So, and it's totally worthless. And, that's just an excuse for them. It's all just shuffling paper around so that they're trying to circumvent the financial rules under UEFA. But I mean, as we've said before, that's now much more problematic than it used to be, because only football income matters. So doing stuff like this, that's not football income. So your percentage that you can spend on your squad doesn't change. So now it's plug in one leak or plug in 3 leaks, but there's one still sprung. So, you know, it's not like, again, I'm sure, I don't look at the comments, but I'm sure people are going, can we talk about us? But, you know, at the end of the day, this is our biggest rivals, domestically speaking. And if they are off the park in terms of they are not really a threat to us, then we can build in a completely different way. You know, we can make long-term plays. We can bring through youth maybe in a different way. We can look at a completely different setup. So, you know, it's incredibly important to us how they perform. So, you know, I would, you know, I think anyway, as we said, I think it's fairly clear it's going in one direction, and that direction is not positive.
No, you're right. And that is the only reason that we're talking about it, because it does change the strategy of, like John says, how you move forward as a football club. What I think has been interesting this week, Patrick, is the fact that, again, Celtic have built from a position where it was a calamity, as John had said earlier on, and we've built a really, really strong side. The recruitment looks really good. It looks as though there's a conveyor belt there, whereby one out, one in. You know, Juranovic leaves, we'll bring in Johnston, etc. We know that Ange has got that up and running. But all I'm hearing is how bad the Scottish game is, how it's the worst league in 20 years. What about giving Celtic a wee bit of credit for actually getting our finger out and putting something in place that is very, very strong and sustainable?
Yeah, and you know, I think it's all about decision making at the end of the day. You know, we have been more than critical of, you know, Celtic's decision making on here. We don't, you know, we're not constantly praising the club for everything and all that they do. We're critical when things go wrong. But, you know, as John says, if you look at the situation 2 years ago, we were in an absolute mess. But the one thing we did have was assets and money. And we cashed in on those assets, Ayer, Edward, and then we let, you know, a brilliant manager reinvest and build an entirely new squad, and we ended up making a profit in that one window. You look at the other side, and you know they held on to their assets. They've let their contracts run down, their values go down, and now guys like Kent and Morelos, who are arguably worth 200 million 2 years ago, are now going to get nothing for them. So, in my opinion, it's all about decision making, and you've got guys like Tam McManus saying the game's, you know, he's never seen a weaker game. And I'd say the gap between Celtic and the rest has probably never been larger, certainly not in my lifetime. But we did have 2 Scottish clubs in the Champions League this season. That's not happened since 2007. That's 60 million, over 60 million.
Mm-hmm.
So if the other 10 clubs are, you know, wanting to try and lock Celtic and Rangers fans out and turn away all that money, if they're wanting to charge, you know, 30 quid for guys to see St Mirren versus Ross County, you've got to look at their decision making and where they're going wrong in running their clubs. I mean, you have this ridiculous managerial merry-go-round where you're talking about Stephen Robinson going to Hearts, and Stephen Robinson's done a great job at St Mirren, but there's never any outward thinking, there's never any forward thinking with these clubs, in my opinion. Hearts, you know, only a matter of weeks ago were flying high in third. They were talking about how we can compete with Celtic and Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
They lose heavily to Rangers. They go on a bad run. They've sacked Robbie Nielsen. They're now 5th or 6th, and I think it's very short term, the thinking of other clubs, and you can't be blaming Celtic for running themselves well. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Do they want like cash giveouts, cash handouts? Are we supposed to give all these clubs £1 million a year? I don't know. I don't know what people like Tam McManus want Celtic to do about things, but all we can do is run our club the best possible we can and hope that other Scottish teams can also pull their weight.
See, on that point, John, right, that Tam made, and by the way, absolutely no hate for Tam McManus whatsoever here. I do listen to PLZ simply because it's probably the only way that I can keep up with what's happening elsewhere in Scottish football, because I'm so focused on Celtic. But the point that was made about the standard of the Scottish game, I think it was more to do with the fact that what Patrick says and what we're spoken about, other Scottish teams need to get their house in order here. They really need to look after their own backyard. We've spoken about it with regards to the ticketing issues, whereby you're basically, if you were to totally maximise that as a football club, you could make over £1 million extra in revenue every year, and you're turning that away in games against Celtic and Rangers. That's a bad decision. That's a really poor business decision.
Drives me nuts because, we've had this conversation before, and we had it with Burrows at Motherwell and, stuff like that, and they're trying to build a community club. They want people to have their own seats, they want that community feel and all the rest of it. But that is theoretical, and that is aspirational.
Yeah,
you're not in a position to be aspirational and turn down $600,000 a year extra between us and them. So you're talking, let's say, an extra, 5,000 people at 30 quid. So that's 150 grand a pop per game they're turning down, so we can watch empty rows of Killie fans leaving in 17 minutes. And what an embarrassment that was with Klinsmann sitting there. I felt bad for O, honestly, because that looked like it's just like pure tin pot stuff. But how can they leave? Who cares what Mr. and Mrs. season ticket holders think there? They say, oh, they're the hardcore. See, if I was the hardcore of one of their supporters, I would think it's more important that we get an extra £1.2 million of revenue in potentially a year. That's what I would think was important, rather than sitting my backside down in the same seat or moving, 10 or 20 rows down the road. Who cares? Who cares? If that's the way if your support of your club is completely tied to the fact that you cannot be moved from this seat, then you're out of your mind. Yeah. You're out of your mind. So I have no sympathy at all when we're looking at stadiums that are basically empty or half empty or 3/4 empty, and we've got supporters chomping at the bit to try to get to those games. And they're just like, oh, no, because, we want to build this theoretical community. As I say, it's a great idea. I like the idea. It's aspirational. You don't have the money. You don't have the money. You've got to get the funds together to present some sort of challenge. The reason you've got fans leaving on 17 minutes is because you can't put up any sort of reasonable challenge because you've not got a coin. And the coins that you do have, you're squandering. So, the thinking behind that irritates me no end. It drives me to distraction. I don't get it. And we're supposed to feel sorry. And we're supposed to feel bad.
I know.
Because we're doing well. And as other people have pointed out, I don't remember the whole conversation about how it was bad for the league when Rangers were dominant in the 90s. I don't remember that discussion. Never came across my desk. So, this fact that, yes, of course, any league, there's loads of leagues around the world that are 1 or 2 team leagues. Loads of them. Yeah. We wanted that Atlantic League, didn't we? So similar leagues, so you've got the Netherlands, Belgium, they've all got 1 or 2 dominant teams. So grand, well, there's going to be a dominant team. There's a big gap at the moment. The reason there's a big gap is because we're doing well. We're doing the job we're supposed to do with the funds that we have. We haven't done that. In the last 20 odd years, we haven't done that. We overspent in the Martin O'Neill years. What we're doing is within budget now, we are absolutely smashing it in the transfer market, which is again, the poll that we came out talking about. The reason why that's so difficult is because we've smashed it in the transfer market. Ange and his team and Nicholson have done a fantastic job. Our corporate side is unbelievable. Our merchandising is unbelievable. Our marketing is unbelievable. And I have found the people at the club to be really, really, really helpful. They were wonderful to work with in all the times I have. And I just want to add this one in. I got a wee sneaky friend at the club who over the last couple of months was able to gather up for me messages from Ange and from Calmac for my daughter's wedding. Now, most people that listen here will know that I missed the game because we were desperately watching it on phones at every opportunity. It's like, do you take this? Well, whoa, hang on. near this. So it was, we were watching it every opportunity, but I got to stand up before I did my speech and play messages. It just said there was a couple of guys that were working today, couldn't make it, wanted to leave a message, and play messages from Callum McGregor and from Ange. And Ange's was, as you'd expect, sensational. And he just finished it off with, I expect you to celebrate in the manner you'd expect of me. We never stop. So, and that was just brilliant. And to be able to do that after pumping them 3-2 and putting the league to bed, I can't begin to tell you how much I love this club.
Oh, John, that is superb. It's fair play to Ange and Cal McGregor, and as you say, the club generally, because that is superb, that level of engagement. Big shout out to Jungle Line. Thanks, everybody. Remember, John has thrown down the gauntlet. What is our top 3 midfield players? No caveats, no if they're playing this one or if that one's fit. Give us your trio. Give us your midfield trio, and we'll have a look at some of the contributions before the end of the show.
Paul, can I just do one wee shout out? I have to mention the fact I was at an event at the weekend. So in Newry, which is where I live, the Willie Mealy commemorative statue was erected. That was organised by fans, and they organised that within 3 years. They raised a sensational amount of money. They've got a plaque down his birthplace. Willie Mealy was born in Newry. It's a massive, massive achievement for a small group of fans to have raised that much money and to put up the statue. And the statue, I'm sure most people have seen the actual pictures online. The plinth is amazing. The actual statue itself is one of the best I've ever seen in terms of the detail on it. So, and its position in Newry is incredibly prominent. So, hats off to all the boys and girls in Newry and everyone that came up to me. There's a lot of love for Acsom out there. So everyone that came up to me, although one guy in a very sort of Father Ted Dougal type situation was like, I thought you'd be about that size. I was like, no, far away, close, far away.
Super.
So we had, unfortunately, I wasn't well enough to attend. I've been quite ill last week, so I wasn't well enough to attend what seemed to be an insane night in the Canal Court afterwards to celebrate, and a much deserved celebration it was as well. It's an incredible job from the supporters here in Newry and locally. So just wanted to shout out to all of them. Fair play. No,
brilliant. The amount of work and effort and time that they've put into it, and obviously the Celtic fans who have been donating over that period as well to get the job done. It's astonishing. And whilst we're on the shout outs, before I come back to Patrick, got a wee message here. Little Jacob Walker, who is only 2 years of age this year, is currently fighting leukemia in Edinburgh. Big shout out to Jacob, his mum Kat, dad Tommy, and sister Aurora as well. We're all thinking about him, and hopefully they can get through that very testing time as a family as well. Jason Lee, Carter Vickers, we've got to talk about the main man. We mentioned it on Sunday, actually, in relation to him being left out of the team. He is going to be out for a while. They've been kind of managing this injury, this knee injury, Patrick. Obviously, you get concerned because he's been an absolute staple in Ange's side. He's a linchpin in that defence. He's a leader. His performances have been absolutely sensational since he's came in, and in particular this season. But I'm looking at that situation. I'm thinking to myself, Patrick, if we can get him up to that Rangers game, if he's fit for the Rangers game, you play him. After that, save him. Get him rested, get the operation. And if that's the case, you then start wondering. Your mind starts wondering because, as I said at the beginning of the show, you're kind of fixed with that back five and you start asking yourself, right, what do we do now? Kobayashi's come into the side. He's looked very composed. He's looked very, very good. What does it say for the likes of Stephen Welsh, who a couple of weeks back, if you'd asked me, I says, right, he's away in the summer. Do you keep a hold of him? Do you strengthen in that position in the summer? So it does beg all these different types of questions. It's horrible when one of your star men gets an injury. But what's your thoughts on that? How do we manage it, Patrick?
Yeah, I'd agree with yourself, to be honest, Paul. I think if we can somehow nurse them through that Rangers game, the semi-final, because it's. And we've not technically wrapped up the league yet, but I think we need something like 7 points from 6 games, so it's effectively over. So that game, if you get through it, it's either Falkirk or Inverness in the final. I personally don't think we would need Carter Vickers in that scenario, bearing in mind we get through with Kobayashi and Starfelt against Kilmarnock, who are in a higher league than both of those sides. So it's that semi-final really is the only game you would say maybe take a risk there. And we know what Rangers can be like. They might try and injure him. I wouldn't put it past them at all, especially with Morelos up front. But immediately after that, get him to London, Switzerland, wherever it is he needs to go for the operation. The day after would be the first day of May. You don't play the Champions League until September, so that's 4 months. So hopefully, if you have it, the day or two after the semi-final, you'll be back for the Champions League next season. So that's what I would do, and I think if Ange feels confident enough to play the semi-final without Carter Vickers, I'd put him through the operation tomorrow, today, yesterday, because he's that important to us. He's definitely our best centre back, arguably one of our most important players. But definitely that semi-final is probably the only game I'd risk him for.
Yeah, and again, we're not taking it for granted, John, either the semi-final or even the final. But you are looking at Carter Vickers and Starfelt have been through this time and time again with Rangers, and they know the game, they know it inside out. It's not to say Kobayashi wouldn't perform, but you don't want to take that risk. I certainly don't want to take that risk. But it's also a risk in playing him, because now that the cat's out the bag, if you like, he might get targeted. He's one of our most important players. He wasn't at his best against Rangers. No. And I thought Starfelt stepped up because of that, almost because of the fact that the man that's standing next to him, who seems to be leading all the time, isn't having the best game. Starfelt steps up. So that makes sense. That makes sense, because that was so unlike Carter Vickers, wasn't it, that performance? But where does it leave us in terms of what we do in the summer? Because I would have thought Welsh could have been on his way. We might have strengthened by bringing in a new arrival for a centre-half. I don't think we're at a stage yet where we can promote someone from the B team quite yet. People might disagree with that. I think we would need to strengthen it. But Carter Vickers, he's been one of the main players under, and it's going to be a massive blow, but you can kind of soften it a wee bit if we just get through this semi-final.
I wouldn't play him if there's any doubt at all, because he obviously wasn't at his best. So it's obviously impacting him psychologically. And quite frankly, Kobayashi is either good enough or he's not. And there's no point, in my view, waiting until we're in Europe to find out. So, Starfelt and Kobayashi should be more than capable of handling Rangers. Yes, of course, you want CCV there. Man's injured. I was told a long time ago he was injured and it was serious and they were managing it. But I doubted the source then, because in the next game he came straight back in. And so I sort of thought, well, maybe that's not true. So I wasn't able to verify it, so I didn't really mention it. But I was told ages ago, this was halfway through the season, he was going to be out for ages and they were managing it. So clearly it's taken its toll. Now, if the manager loves his centre-halves, so if the manager thinks he can squeeze another game out of Carter Vickers, you can be sure he'll play him. I don't think it should make a difference. Kobayashi looks very comfortable, but we've only seen him, we haven't seen him under severe pressure. The closest I think was the Hearts game, I think, saying, when they were trying to push on, but we've not seen him under sort of Rangers style pressure. But he looks composed, he looks calm. We don't know how he's, we have a weakness at set pieces. So how is he going to improve it? Is he going to make it worse? Chances are he probably makes it worse, actually. He's not noted for his, sort of powerful aerial challenges. However, he is a very smooth, slick player, and the distribution is faster because he's on his left foot. And Starfelt then plays on his correct side, makes Starfelt a better player. Look, our centre half position is night and day compared to theirs. I don't know, that clown show they had against us. So it was, our guys are, the decisions we make are sort of real good decisions from a position of strength. in terms of what we do in the summer, the issue, and we discussed this way back when it was Maurice Jens was the thing. What happens to the likes of Stephen Welsh? Well, the problem is you need 4 centre-halves. But the other problem is when your manager doesn't rotate the centre-halves, if you're number 4, you're never getting a game.
Yeah.
So Stephen, who are you going to sign that's better than Stephen Welsh, that's going to come in knowing full well, like the sort of the third tier goalie? You're never getting a game. Unless some sort of nuclear event happens, you're not going to be playing. So essentially, if Stephen's happy to fulfil that role, I'm not sure about moving him on. And also, we are very, very close, I think, to this the homegrown players issue becoming an issue. Sorry, the homegrown players numbers becoming an issue from next year. So we need 8 homegrown, and we need 4 through the system. Mm-hmm. That's quite a lot when you look at our squad, and you'd be talking about promoting guys from the B team, just to be in the European squad, mm-hmm. just to make up the numbers. Potentially putting guys on the A list instead of the B list. All this sort of thing. So we need to be careful amongst all this sort of transfer dealings that we don't leave ourselves short to the point where you're essentially putting out a weakened squad in Europe just to make those numbers up. So it's a difficult one. Ideally, of course, you want tremendous people in every position, but the reality is someone is 3rd, 4th, 5th choice. We need guys who are happy to accept that. So I don't know how much longer Stephen will be happy to accept it, but while he is, unless we can promote from someone who is going to qualify as homegrown, then I think it's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difference, isn't it? I mean, a player like David Turnbull, for example, Patrick, it didn't come through our system, but his class is homegrown, having come through Motherwell's. James McCarthy's the same, and you would expect maybe a player like James McCarthy to leave as well. So there's another one off the list. Do you think because of this and because of the injury that might actually change a decision on Stephen Welsh staying at the club? Because there's definitely been interest over a few transfer windows, and I finally expected him, because he was out the squads mainly, to leave in the summer. Mikey Johnson, we've done a whole show calling an eye on who's going to come back and play for Celtic. Very few of the 12 players, but Mikey Johnson may also benefit from the fact that he is classed as a homegrown player. Rudy Vata's son Rocco stepping up in recent times as well. Obviously, he's come through the ranks. We were talking this morning in the group with Jared from Celtic Down Under, who pointed out that Boston Lowell wouldn't be, because he's only been in our system for 2 years and you need to be in the system for 3. So there's all these things to consider. Do you think that might give a wee lifeline to guys like Mikey Johnson and Stephen Welsh, Patrick?
Yeah, I think it could. I mean, I said last Wednesday I thought Stephen Welsh might go, because he's nowhere near the team. I can't remember the last time he started a game. I think it was possibly before the World Cup, actually, the last time he started a game. But as John says, it does make you think. He is a homegrown player, so he helps with that European squad issue. And then it's hard to attract a player who would be happy with 4th choice as a centre half. I wouldn't like to think that we would be signing someone to be 4th choice. I think I would like us to always try and sign first team players, and then as you do that, guys eventually fall down the ranks. Very idealistic of me, obviously, trying to find a player better than Starfelt and Carter Vickers, but I mean, this UEFA thing is a problem, because I think it's possibly why we gave James Forrest an extension just over a year ago, because he is homegrown Scottish, came to the club. And in the first team, you've only really got McGregor and Ralston, I think, unless I'm forgetting someone. Turnbull's in and around there, obviously, but it's obviously something you need.
There's another one as well, Scott Bain.
Aye. It's definitely something you need to keep in mind. It's something that I forget about quite a lot of the time, the European list thing. So maybe we won't see Stephen Welsh move on. Maybe if no one leaves, then centre half could be an area where we don't see much movement in the summer. Actually, I'm on record as saying I think we need a new goalkeeper. I think we need someone a bit better. Someone who stands a chance of saving a penalty, someone who's a bit better with their feet. Especially for Europe and the way that we want to play and trying to take that next step. So when it comes to transfers, I would be focused on the goalie.
Yeah, I mean, again, you wonder what the story is with Seagrist, who's fallen off the side of the earth as well. No, he can't fall off the side of the earth because that would mean I'm a flat earther. Which, no, please. Conspiracies I like for a half-hour bit of fun on YouTube, but no, I'm not a flat earther. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. He's disappeared from view. Martin Davies coming in on YouTube. Afternoon Troop says we are getting closer to winning the league. Ange is on the road to looking for new players for next season. So how about a striker centre back to start with, Troops? Yeah, well, we've just been speaking about the centre back position. Let's have a wee chat though about the striking positions, John. We've been blessed. We really have been blessed with strikers over the years. So the way that Celtic play, the way that Ange plays, you're going to have high scoring strikers, and we've had them in abundance over throughout my Celtic supporting life actually. And we've got one at the moment in Kyogo, who is a bit special. 29 goals, this season, 20 last season. He's a goal off hitting his own personal landmark of 50. He's heading towards 30, maybe 35, maybe 35 plus. Bit of a vintage campaign for him. But I think a big part of our performance dipping a wee bit was the fact we took him off. He's such a dynamic player, John, and you take him off and you've got a completely different type of player on the bench, which isn't a bad thing. But, Kyogo, it's all about what he can achieve this season. He's the type of guy against Rangers in the semi, you wouldn't put it past him to hit a brace, hit a hat-trick. He's the guy that steps up time and time again.
Well, that first goal, you had to laugh. I mean, he intercepts it from the boy Murray. God bless that fella. He had a wasting of enormous proportions, a super mare that I haven't seen the likes of in quite some time. It's bad when the opposition fans are feeling sorry for you, but I mean that was horrific. So intercepted, but then he sells the dummy on the boy, and that dummy was so good, it started its own career in showbiz. A wee ventriloquist act, and went out, hit the highlights, sold out a few shows, came back, and he was still waiting to pull the trigger. So it was an outrageous bit of skill, and he had so much time. Honestly, I think Kyogo could have. I mean, he was probably on Tinder, organising picnics with his girlfriend, or he could have gone on the picnic and come back, and he still hadn't shot. Anyway, sort of slight exaggeration there, but it was a phenomenal finish, and it was not the only one. He's at the moment, he's just so sharp. He's so much sharper than everyone else really in this league. He's so much sharper than most of the defences in this league. They just can't contain him. His movement is unbelievable. And it was a big decision for him last year to get that operation on his hamstring. That put him out for the rest of the season. So I think his choice was don't get the operation and just hope it doesn't happen again. So it was brave of him to, make that decision. And we are seeing the fruits of that now. I mean, he's been sensational. And you have to look at the comments the likes of Matt O'Reilly made about him, just saying he's the nicest man I've ever met. He could miss 5 open goals and he's still smiling. He's just that kind of a guy. And that's an incredible boost. I think when you'd think that was a bad thing, really. Before I'd seen Kyogo, if you'd asked me beforehand, I would have said that was not a trait that you wanted in a footballer. But actually, it's quite uplifting. Mm-hmm. It really sort of, the fact he just sort of misses a terrible sitter and smiles through it, comes back, scores an absolute wonder goal. The guy's unreal. What an attitude to have. And, to be able to inspire the rest of your teammates to say those sort of things about you is absolutely fantastic, because they're looking at him and he's like, don't worry, lads, there'll be another along in a minute. It's like the buses, I don't know what the buses are like in Japan, to be fair, but I mean, he's just such a good player, and he's a joy to watch. He's a credit to himself. He's a credit to the club. He's a great example for all the youngsters. He's a great example for the senior pros. We're very, very lucky to have him. And attitude-wise, this is a very cynical game that we're in now in the modern era, and he brings that sort of childlike joy back into it, and it's a fantastic thing to see. I love the wee man.
No, John, you make the point about the penalty. Patrick, has there ever been a situation in your Celtic supporting life where you don't get angry when a player misses a penalty? It's the only time I can remember when, you can smile and giggle about it and you don't get annoyed at him because it's Kyogo.
Yeah.
I do have a scenario in which I've never been angry at a player missing a penalty. I don't know if you remember, we beat Dundee 6-0 in Ronnie's second season, and Izaguirre had scored 2 goals, and we got a penalty, and he took it, and he bloody skied it over the bar.
Yeah,
and I just thought, that's a shame. But
I think a few of his teammates were laughing at him as well, to be fair.
Aye, but that's the only other time, because Izaguirre was an equally lovable guy.
Yeah.
I didn't find his second spell all that funny, right enough. He was an absolute disaster that season. But Kyogo's a very lovable guy, and I agree with John. I wouldn't have said that. That'd been a good attribute to have, because if you look at our campaign in Europe, maybe he misses a few chances. We lose a lot of games. We don't win one game out of 6. And as fans, you obviously get frustrated, and you want to take that next step forward. And he's at the side of the pitch picking up litter and stuff, and you do get a bit frustrated, or you can get a bit frustrated, but he's constantly bringing that positive energy, and I think with the way we play, you just need to go again, because you know that the chances will come, and you know that eventually he's going to put one in the back of the net. So to remain positive and to just keep on sort of plugging away and doing your job. I've got every confidence we're going to do even better in the Champions League next season, because it's just the way Ange operates. If Ange doesn't think he's getting better, he'll probably just up sticks and leave. That's the way he seems to operate. So I've got no doubt we're going to improve, and I've got no doubt Kyogo's going to be a big part of that. And his next goal for Celtic will be his 50th, so that's a tremendous milestone for him as well.
Magical. The Donkey Bus. Hit the like button on the way in, guys. Helps the channel. Thank you for the reminder. It definitely does. No doubt about it. And Paddy Lavery's in as well with his usual afternoon. Thank you for joining us, Paddy. Scott Mason, where should we be extending heavy scouting to next with what looks like heavy knowledge of Japan in place? Do we not need more countries with heavy-duty knowledge targeted for Ange's system? I'm pretty sure that he is scouring the planet for various markets that maybe are, I'm not going to say untapped, but certainly not as fruitful as Japan has been for us so far. Now, we were kind of talking about the introduction of some players, Haksabanovic, for example, John, and the question was asked yesterday about him keeping his place. I feel a wee bit sorry for him. I've been reading a lot of comments on the socials when we begged the question, should he start against Motherwell? Because he wasn't starting in his preferred position. He's getting thrown in for his first start in a while. And I guess the debate is whether, if you put a player in and he doesn't perform that well, play him again. I think we've done that with Matt O'Reilly, and he played through it and he got back to his best. And O'Reilly's another conversation entirely. But Haksabanovic, where do you sit with him? Do you give him another game against Motherwell? I certainly would.
I absolutely would. I love Haksabanovic. The problem is, I think he is potentially going to lose his place in this team, because I don't think he's being played in his correct position. Back in Russia, I think they used to call him the winger that couldn't run. So we know he doesn't really have any pace, but he is an incredibly skillful player. Such a talent. Wonderful shot on him, wonderful vision, wonderful weight of pass. He has all those things, but he's really a 10. I think that's where he, if we could get him inside in a 10 position, I think he could be the best player on the park. But who are we going to sacrifice for that? And I think there is a real potential for him just falling through the cracks. Because, Do I play him again against Motherwell with the stage that we're at in the league and all the rest of it? Yeah, absolutely. Is he better than Jota? No, he's not. Do you play him in front of Maeda? Well, what are you giving up for that? So Maeda's got wild pace, wild work rate, all the rest of it. You'd be giving up an awful lot for that. Is he a more skillful player than Maeda? I think he probably is, but that you're giving up so much more with Maeda that I don't think he gets in front of him. So where do you play him? Is he ever going to get in a 10 position, given the fact we've still got to come back to those poll results, Paul, and discuss that midfield? Is he ever going to take the place of one of the three boys or one of the 3 or 4 guys that we've already got in there and we can't make a decision on? So, I think it would be a most unfortunate situation if we can't get him in the team. We can't give him minutes. I think he's an unbelievable talent. He didn't cover himself in glory, but he didn't do much wrong. That second half wasn't the best, obviously, and the first half was just ridiculous. It's just like, Matt O'Reilly with the freedom of the ground, just because of the way we were playing. Their guys intent and shooting themselves in the foot. We were absolutely sensational in that first half, and the second half was just a complete almost waste of time. I don't really blame him for that. But again, you're talking about then Rocco Vata comes on.
Yeah.
In that position, he puts in a sensational ball. Did he put in the second? With the 2 that all missed, was he the first one and the second one, or just the second one? He looks a player as well. The ball he put in there, should have scored that. It's a difficult one. The choices that we have to make. Talking of which, Paul, the choices that were made. So, over 4,080 votes. At the bottom of the list was the only one without Kalmak. So the choice without Kalmak got to Tati, Iwata and Moy. That got 1% of 4,000 people. That's 40 people in need of a lobotomy. And then we've got Hatate, O'Reilly and Kalmak at 22%. Hutati, Moy and Kalmak at 29%. And bearing in mind there is obviously a bit of recency bias given the game that we just had, Hatate, Iwata and Kalmak, 48%. Having said that, with recency bias, I agree with that because I think that's the midfield going forward. I think that's the midfield for next year. I want to see that level of security. I want us to be able to retain the ball better than we do. And all I was really wanting to see was a bit more T's game. Because it was the same thing when Moy came in with as when Iwata came in. They were so safe. That's when I first used the phrase, have some testicular fortitude, pass the ball forward. Right? So, and I used that about Aaron Moy, and Moy came on to a game later. Iwata there on Saturday, I was just astonished at the positions he was getting into and how aggressive he was at getting in, and the fact that him and Kalmak were just rotating that role of the sort of defensive role at the back. I thought it was a tremendous performance, and his range of passing and his calmness, I thought was sensational. So I think for me in Europe, I think that is the midfield trio I'd like to see. However, it is purely subjective, and there's an awful lot of people out there who is currently their heads are exploding, talking about how imperious O'Reilly is and how Aaron Moy is the bald James Bond who can, who's so smooth and he just opens up defences whenever he feels like it. So I don't think Moyes, I said that this year, I don't think Moy is the answer in Europe or in the future in any way. Brilliant season, but he's an old man basically, and he's only going to get older. I think O'Reilly is an argument because he's been sensational the last couple of games, but he's blown hot and cold. And I think for dependability, solidity. Iwata looks like a sumo that's done very well in Weight Watchers the last couple of months. Do you know what I mean? He is a unit. He is a big laddie. He is a solid lump. Mm-hmm. And with that and with his range of passing, with that athleticism, sensational. I'll let you boys get a word in here.
Well, no, by the way, you're talking about recency bias, and I totally get it, because I think a few weeks back, had you run that poll, John, Moy would have got a lot of votes, a lot more votes. We've obviously seen a wee bit more of a Wata since then. I agree with you in that I think that is the future. I think that, you know, it's with one eye on Europe next season with the Wata coming in. My own choice in terms of the three, and like you say it with no caveat, John, is Hatate, Callum McGregor, and Matt O'Reilly. I'm still a massive fan of O'Reilly. And again, not just because he's had a couple of really good performances recently. I think back to that player that burst onto the scene last season. I think back to the adaptability of him in Europe. And I think that trio came third in your poll. Is that right?
That came third, yeah.
That came third. So I know there's loads of people who disagree with that, but that for me is our best midfield. And if that's your best midfield and Wata can't get a game and Moy can't get a game and Turnbull's not even really getting a mention, I think that speaks volumes. Patrick, where are you on this midfield trio?
In a sense, I agree with both of you. Obviously, you know, the 1% at the bottom, I find that hard to believe that anyone would drop Callum McGregor. But you know, I would agree with you, Paul. For 95% of the games, it has to be McGregor, Hatate, and O'Reilly for me. I think you've got enough control in the midfield with Callum McGregor that against 10, if not 11 of the SPFL teams that we play, we can control the game. You know, I don't think we need a guy like Awata for most of the time in the SPFL. But obviously, and I know you don't want me to sit in the fence, and I know we shouldn't have these caveats. But in Europe, I've spoken previously about how we lack control, in my opinion, because obviously we're up against teams with far more resource and far more money. And I think that lack of control is what costs us. So to have Iwata play alongside McGregor with Hatate being the sort of creative spark, I think would be brilliant. So I would say for 95% of the time, it has to be Hatate, O'Reilly, McGregor. But I would like to see Iwata come in for European games. So I'll go with largely agreeing with you, Paul, and the 22%.
I'll tell you what an answer. Yeah, politician's answer. I like that.
That was, I mean, honestly, I'm surprised you can sit for the splinters in your backside on that. That was, is there any more? What about games that are on a holiday? You know, it's another team for bank holiday weekends. You know, but yeah. Anyway, sorry.
It's a great poll. It's a great question. It shows just how strong we are in that area of the park. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it just shows you the fact that you both have just agreed with the third answer, basically, or the third most popular answer, just shows you the difference in subjectivity and how that it's really only me and the other 48% of people who are correct.
You understand, though, John, if Kev Graham was on here, he'd have picked Ideguchi, Turnbull, and McCarthy. just for the argument, right?
The great thing about football is, of course, that we play, is it 50 games a season or something? I mean, we play something like 47 domestic games and at least 6 European games. So you can't play the same 3 week in, week out. So the midfield will change. And that is the brilliance. That is a brilliant part of having, arguably 5 or 6 first choice midfield players.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I mean, the reason I posed it was really just because of that, because there are so many caveats. I just was trying to get a feel for who people think are the top 3 players. Who do you think are the 3 best players? Because ultimately, I know what you're saying about the SPFL, but we're looking to progress in Europe, and that basically means we need to be playing our best side. We can't, the problem you have is you can't just play. You can't just get a Wata into the team and say, "Big man, listen, it's Real Madrid next week," and then you're not playing again for another month. So it's very difficult. He's going to have to play. If we're going to use him in Europe, he's going to have to play. Because it's too much to expect of anyone to drop in at the highest level of the game with essentially no warm up. Mm-hmm. So it's a problem we're always going to have, really, just because of this domestic situation. But I would love to see him play. But again, I really want to see more of a 4-2-3-1. But we did effectively move into a 4-2-3-1 when we were defending the other day, and then you know, again, between Cal McGregor and himself, they were both getting themselves into really forward positions quite aggressively, you know, when we were attacking. So there was a lot of movement and fluidity within the squad. They were changing positions. It's not as if, you know, it's not as if they're rigid in those positions and we can't ever move them out of it. So, yeah, but what I was really, really enthused by was the range of his skill. I was worried that he was just a boy that was going to sit in there and pass it sideways, and he's definitely not that.
Mm-hmm. He's been very, very impressive, opinionated Glaswegian OG. Of course, Kyogo was just trying to set up Maeda about 1-2 off the post. Absolutely, yes, I can buy that all day long. And we've got Corvo Atano. Mickey Johnson was decent for the Republic of Ireland. Do you guys think he still has a future? I think that there are different reasons for it rather than just his ability. But yes, I do think he'll come back. And a big part of that is he's a homegrown player. And Danielle's worried in case we do get a penalty shootout. And I can understand this because we're not phenomenally good at either end of the park when it comes to penalties. We could be humiliated, says Danielle. At some point, if a game went to penalties, it really worries me. Well, hopefully we won't have to see it this season. Listen, it's been an absolute joy to join you guys on Wednesday. Slightly different from Kev Graham, but he will be back with me tonight. So tune in at about 6 o'clock for myself and Kev talking about the Master Plan, which was the B-Sides album by Oasis. That's a wee bit left field, but if you're into the band, you'll understand why. Kyogo is heading towards 50 goals for Celtic. Big John Hartson scored either 109 or 110, depending on the source you check. I'm going to have to go through all the games and count them up myself. And we are going to be in conversation with the big fella next week in Glasgow. There are 47 tickets available if you want to come along. The ticket link is underneath this video, and every single ticket buyer will be entered in to a prize draw to win a signed and framed Joe Hart shirt. And I know that Danielle would love that as a prize, but I'm not sure if you're buying a ticket, Danielle. Big fan of Joe Hart, looking for a new goalie in the summer. So, yeah, get involved and you can meet some members of Acsom along the way as well. It's been an absolute joy. 750, 800 live on the stream. Give us a thumbs up. Thanks, everybody, for getting involved. And thank you to Patrick and John for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Hail, hail.